Okay, as Marianne said, my name is Eric Knapp. I'm a longtime collector of a lot of things. In this case, I'm a collector of Scouts on stamps and have been for many years. Although probably like a lot of you, for a long time my collection was more of a pile with delusions of grandeur. I think we've all been there. Anyway, a few years ago, I started getting serious about it, and I noticed a particular portrait kept popping up among the stamps issued by many countries for scouting, and that is tonight's tale. We're going to start with the man. This is Robert Stephenson Smyth Baden-Powell. How's that for a name? He's born in Paddington, London in 1857. He joined the British Army in 1876 and was commissioned an officer in the 13th Hussars in India. He served with distinction in many places. He even became a published author while in the Army. He published a training manual, a small training manual in 1899 called Aids to Scouting. It was meant to be a training manual for Army Scouts. Shortly after this was published, he was ordered to the Cape Colony in what is now South Africa because there was trouble brewing, and that trouble turned into the Second Anglo-Boer War. Baden-Powell was sent to a small town in the border country called Mafeking, and his orders were either hold the place or evacuate it. He decided to hold it. There is some controversy about that still to this day, but that's for another time. The Boer forces surrounded the city, and Mafeking was under siege for 217 days. During that time, news of the siege was headline news in England, and Baden-Powell's dispatches from the siege that were smuggled out became both national news and turned him into an unlikely national hero, especially in a time early in the Boer War when there were not too many heroes on the British side of that war. He came home after the war to find his little Army training manual called Aids to Scouting was a bestseller, particularly among boys who were taking the book and emulating the training in it. From this, he got an idea. He talked with several people who ran different boys' organizations, and in 1907, he ran a test scout camp out on an island in Poole Harbor in the UK. From that, he came up with his final ideas, and he rewrote and expanded his little Aids to Scouting book into a book called Scouting for Boys. This is the birth of the Boy Scouting movement. His book, Scouting for Boys, is said to be the fourth best-selling book of the 20th century. Baden-Powell died in 1941, and I would argue that he is the private citizen who has appeared on more stamps than any other private citizen. Next, we're going to look at the portrait. This was painted in 1929 by David Jaeger, Jaeger or Jaeger, I'm not sure. I'm going to call it Jaeger. David Jaeger was a well-known and prolific painter in the first half of the 20th century. He's well known for his portraiture. He was actually one of three artists' siblings, and this particular portrait is his most reproduced work for obvious reasons. This was presented to Baden-Powell as a gift at the Third World Jamboree in 1929. It was also known as the Coming of Age Jamboree because it marked the 21st year of scouting. The original painting hangs in the Baden-Powell House in London, and a reproduction of it hangs at the World Association of the Scouting Movement offices in Geneva, Switzerland. Prints of the portrait have been used by scouting organizations worldwide. This particular one scanned here is a print that it's about 7 by 9.5 roughly. They were sold in scout shops for people to have. They were also given out as awards at various times. I have a different one that is badly faded, but it is inscribed to a scout unit as an award for an event. And as an award, it went proudly up onto a bulletin board and stayed there for many years, and as I said, faded. It's still interesting to have. Now, so we have the man and the portrait. In 1957, we begin to see the stamps. 1957 was the 50th anniversary of Scouts. It also was the 100th anniversary of Baden-Powell's birth. So several countries honored both events. And in this case, we have 5 stamp issuing entities who issued 7 stamps, each picturing the Jaeger portrait. And as I note here, Cuba was the first one to print a stamp featuring this portrait. As I said, there were 7 portrait stamps issued in 1957 for the event. The portrait also found its way onto cachets. This particular one is a cover with the Scout Jubilee stamps for the UK. The stamps themselves feature Queen Elizabeth, but the cachet in this case features the Jaeger portrait as part of the cachet design. This one features the Brazilian portrait stamp, and the cachet also shows the portrait, but you notice the portrait is flipped. In fact, if you look really closely, you'll see the decorations Baden-Powell is wearing on his pocket here are on the opposite pocket. So it is a mirror image flip of the image. This will come up again later. In 1965, Nigeria became the first country to issue a souvenir sheet featuring the Jaeger portrait. And this is part of rather than being the main piece, it's part of an overall design. Togo also issued this souvenir sheet in 1982. There were several souvenir sheets between. This one is just a very nice version of a souvenir sheet. And speaking of 1982, 1982 was the 75th anniversary of Scouting. There was a large effort around the world of stamps honoring Scouting and honoring Baden-Powell. Over the year, there were 36 stamps issued with the Jaeger portrait on them. And there were also, as seen here, postcards that featured the portrait. One country in 1982 that issued portrait stamps was Haiti, but you notice that on the three values of their stamps that they issued with the portrait, they actually flipped the portrait again. So this is the first time that a flipped portrait appeared on a stamp. This has happened since. As an example here, this is a souvenir sheet from Togo. And again, the portrait is a mirror image flip. The military decorations are shown on the wrong pocket, essentially. The portrait has appeared with other people. In this case, this was for the Golden Jubilee of the Girl Guides in Australia. This is the Jaeger portrait with an image of an Australian Girl Guide. This is a family issue. This is the portrait along with a portrait of Olive Baden-Powell, who was Robert Baden-Powell's wife. And this is Baden-Powell with the founder of Scouting in Greece, whose name I will butcher, so I won't even try. And then this one is an example of something we all see in topical collecting, of countries trying to stuff a lot of topics into one sheet. This Paraguay sheet actually honors Paul Harris, who was the founder of Rotary International, but they also stuck in the events for 60th anniversary of a chess federation, the anniversary of Apollo 11, an anniversary of railroad, and of Scouting. This one just amuses me. This is a souvenir sheet from Turkmenistan. It shows the Baden-Powell portrait with a picture of Princess Diana for some reason. Obviously, Princess Diana and Baden-Powell never met. Far as anyone knows, neither of them visited Turkmenistan. In fact, at the time this was issued, Turkmenistan did not have a scouting organization, and it still doesn't. So why this souvenir sheet other than people would buy it? I think that's the reason. The portrait has also turned up in the salvage of various stamps. This one is the 2007 centennial issue from the Isle of Man. And you notice the Jaeger portrait is within the salvage. This is one of the millennial souvenir sheets from the Central African Republic. And while the portrait did not make it onto any of the stamps, it did make it into the salvage of the souvenir sheet. And Baden-Powell appears to be in good company here. In 2007, it was the 100th anniversary of Scouting and the 100th anniversary of the birth of Baden-Powell. There was a big effort to honor Scouting this year. Scouting was the subject of the 2007 Europa stamps, as can be seen here. And many countries included the Jaeger portrait as part of their stamps. In this case, the 28 different portrait stamps were issued in 2007. Now, we have seen little changes in the portrait as we have gone through, but sometimes it got stylized. These are perfect examples of that. This one on this side is a postcard. This was used by the southeastern region of the Boy Scouts of America in 2007. And this is another souvenir sheet. This was issued by Palau. You notice they took the classic image of the portrait and modernized it a little bit, changed it up, and produced something rather interesting. Now, in case you thought this was over, the portrait is still in use. This is Madagascar. This one was issued in 2019 with the portrait here. And this souvenir sheet from Togo, that was issued this year. In fact, it was issued 2 months ago. And if you notice up here on the stamp itself, there is a slightly different portrait of Baden-Powell. That is also a popular stamp vignette. It's not as popular, though. That one is taken from a photograph. So anyway, as I said, a short presentation. By my count, there are at least 240 different issues using the portrait. And I'm probably wrong on that. I probably missed some as I was going through and making my count. There are going to be more. In fact, as I showed with Togo, they're still being issued. And this year, 2021, is actually the 80th anniversary of Baden-Powell's death. So there will be more tribute stamps coming out, and I expect several of them will have the portrait on them. Now then, what do I call this thing? What category does it fall into? Is it a part of a scouting collection? Yes, it is. Is it part of a collection of a person? Yes, it is. And could I actually call it maybe an art on stamps collection involving one painting? I could do that too. It is entirely up to me as the collector what I want to do, and I'm just having fun with this. I intend to keep looking for things. There are other stamps to find. There are a lot of covers out there. There are a lot of postcards and maximum cards. And I think it's just kind of the thrill of the hunt is always good. Thank you to everybody.